Chapter 118. He's crazy. What are you talking about? Dr. Gao was made even more confused by what Chen Ge said. He could not follow the man's train of thought anymore. Of course, this was not Dr. Gao's fault. Only Chen Ge himself knew about the hint provided by the black phone. The most crucial hint was the name of the mission, a room of 3. Chen Ge would not reveal the black phone to anyone, so he did not explain himself to Dr. Gao but walked out of the room alone. Men Nan kept experiencing the same dream, and the thing that he remembered most clearly was washing his hair. The dream itself could not be counted as a nightmare. Even Men Nan had said at the park that when he experienced this dream for the first time, he did not feel fear. It was after the man had gotten close to him that he started to feel fear. So, in that case, the real threat to Men Nan was the man. Men Nan's description of the dream confirmed this. When he was washing his hair, he did not feel any threat, but when the man neared him, he felt hostility. In the last dream, the man had wandered to his side and strangled his neck. Obviously, the man meant him harm. Therefore, in the room of 3, there was Men Nan, the victim, and of the remaining 2, one wanted to protect him and the other wanted to harm him. In traditional Chinese beliefs, washing one's hair in a dream meant removing bad luck, so Men Nan's dream could very well be warning him that danger was encroaching. After uncovering Men Nan's past, Chen Ge suspected that the person who wanted to protect Men Nan was his mother. They had only had each other when Men Nan was growing up, so his mother had no reason to harm him. On the other hand, the person who wanted to harm him should have been the ex-tenant in room 303. When Chen Ge arrived at Haiming apartments for the first time, he had immediately noticed the red strings on the railings. They were knotted in a special way. It was a traditional method of warding off evil spirits. From that moment onward, Chen Ge had suspected there was a malicious presence in this apartment. That combined with what the uncle from room 301 had told him before entering Men Nan's room as well, the mission hint from the black phone confirmed his suspicion. To know the identity of the man from Men Nan's dream as well as to solve Men Nan's problem, I have to enter room 303. Furthermore, this is related to the black phone's mission, harming people in their dream. The thing in room 303 was definitely not a kind spirit. It was probably similar to the mirror monster Chen Ge had come across earlier. Have to face those monsters again. People were separated into good and evil. It was similar for the departed. Chen Ge would not hesitate to destroy these evil spirits. The uncle from room 301 said that someone died in room 303 before, and it has stayed vacant since. This means that what remains in the room is probably the dead tenant's malicious specter. Chen Ge had seen several types of ghosts already. The weakest of them was the lingering spirits. They were not that powerful, just a lingering consciousness. Stronger than lingering spirits were the spirits like Xiao, and stronger than that was the mirror monster. Chen Ge believed that the thing inside the apartment should be as powerful as the mirror monster. I wasn't afraid then, so why should I be afraid now? Furthermore, there are so many living people around me who can help at a moment's notice. Chen Ge walked toward Men Nan to ask about the location of the landlord. Then he left room 304. He returned to the first floor to knock on room 101. After a while, a fat woman in her 50s opened the door. She studied Chen Ge up and down before asking, "You want to rent a room?" "Yes, my friend is living in room 304, so I want to rent the room next to him, room 303. 303 is not for rent. Find another room." "The room is empty. Why isn't it for rent?" Chen Ge asked. "There are empty rooms on the 4th floor. If you refuse to take those, then leave." The woman then closed the door, effectively ending the conversation. Is she naturally that unsociable, or have I touched upon a sensitive subject? Either way, room 303 sure has its secrets. The landlady naturally would not share the history of the dead person inside room 303, so Chen Ge swapped his target and returned to the 3rd floor to knock on room 301. The television volume lowered, and the man that stank of alcohol came to answer the door. "You again?" "Boss, can I have a little bit of your time?" Chen Ge handed him a 100 note from his pocket. The man accepted the money, and his eyes that fell on Chen Ge seemed friendly. "What do you want?" "I want to know about the things that happened in room 303. The more detailed, the better. Room 303, you say? The middle-aged man did not exit the door, but waved at Chen Ge to ask him to enter his room. The small apartment was filled with trash, and Chen Ge could barely find a place to stand. After closing the door, the man turned the television volume up before saying, "You sure are an inquisitive fella, but listen to me. For the sake of yourself and your friend, move out of this place as soon as you can. Not everyone can stay here." "What do you mean? There's criteria to the tenants?" "Interestingly enough, it's related to room 303. The man grabbed a random bottle off the table and took a slurp of beer. "Do you know what the name of the original tenant that stayed in that room was?" "How would I know something like that?" Chen Ge tried his best to ignore the alcoholic breath that drifted out of the man's mouth. It was difficult to tell whether the man was serious or merely making up a story. "The man's name was Wang Haiming. This is his apartment building. But I saw the landlady earlier. She appeared to be a woman in her 50s. That's his ex-wife." The man glared at Chen Ge, telling him to not interrupt him. Wang Haiming was fortunate enough to land on a pot of gold. After that, he abandoned his wife to marry a woman from a mysterious background. A few years later, that woman left Wang Haiming with all his money and even registered him at a mental hospital. In the end, it was his ex-wife who pitied Wang Haiming and got him out of the hospital. She then arranged a room for him to stay in. That room was room 303. Wang Haiming was once in a mental hospital? Chen Ge was reminded of the Black Phone's mission hint. He came from the third sick hall. Yes, regardless of whether or not the man was crazy before he entered the place, after he came out from it, he was definitely abnormal. Abnormal? What do you mean? I'll give you a simple example. The man pointed at his head. Wang Haiming had the tendency to knock his head against the wall whenever midnight arrived. It was as if there was something that had drilled itself inside his brain, and he wanted to crack it open. He would scream and wail, as well as have arguments with himself. Sometimes he would not stop even when his head was already bleeding. No one was able to stop him. Occasionally, they even had to call the cops to apprehend the guy. Chapter 119. He has returned. Use his head to hit the wall, like something had drilled into his brain? Chen Ge thought about what the man had said and realized that Wang Haiming's condition was rather similar to Zhang Peng's. They were both possessed by something, but Zhang Peng had chosen to cooperate while Wang Haiming had decided to struggle. Midnight was the time of the day when the yin energy was most concentrated, and thus the time when those things were at their most active. It explained why Wang Haiming acted up every day near midnight. Chen Ge decided to continue this line of questioning. "Boss, other than the nightly madness, did Wang Haiming perform any other weird actions?" When he first came out of the mental hospital, he felt normal, a little reticent if anything. However, after prolonged interaction, we discovered how weird he really was. He seemed fine in the day and sometimes would even greet others, but he changed into a different man as night fell, banging his head against the wall, talking to mirror and the walls, strangling his own neck until his face was purple. But he still would not let go. Through the man's description, Chen Ge discovered a thing or two about Wang Haiming's past. Wang Haiming's second wife cheated him out of all his money and sent him to a mental hospital. If this was a setup, then Wang Haiming had probably been totally normal before he entered the hospital. A normal person entered the hospital and came out not normal. He probably brought the thing back from the hospital. An answer slowly settled in Chen Ge's heart, and he asked another question. "Do you mind giving me the details of Wang Haiming's death?" The man raised the bottle in his arm to take a big gulp. "I don't know why you're so interested in a dead man, but listen to me. Get out while you still can. The place is cursed." "Thank you, but I know what I'm doing." After more persuasion from Chen Ge, the man finally loosened his lips. Before this, whenever Wang Haiming acted up, we could hear his screaming, and the tenants would go over to help or call the place. However, on the day of his death, none of us heard him. The next morning, when the landlady went to drop him food, his body had already gone cold. "What did the scene of his death look like?" Chen Ge asked. This was crucial if he wanted to reconstruct what happened to Wang Haiming. The man gave Chen Ge a curious look. He could not understand why this young man was so interested in these things. At the time, I was also there. There was a large hole on Wang Haiming's forehead, and blood was splattered all over the wall between 303 and 304. His face was purple, like he had died from asphyxiation. There were fingerprints around his neck, but according to the police, they came from Wang Haiming himself. So he strangled himself to death? The room was locked, and he was alone. The door and windows weren't tampered with, so that seemed like the logical conclusion. The man finished the beer and tossed the empty bottle away. "You done? Since the sun is still up, I want to go down to buy some beer." "Since the sun is still up?" Chen Ge glanced at the darkening sky and finished the conversation. "One last question. After Wang Haiming's death, have there been any weird happenings around here?" Chen Ge noticed the man's face shift when he asked that question. The man glanced at the money in his palm and whispered to Chen Ge. "Many old tenants swear that they have seen Wang Haiming return." "But isn't he dead?" Before Chen Ge had finished, the man pushed him out of the room. "Hey, explain yourself!" The man had already turned down the corridor. After some hesitation, Chen Ge walked toward the first floor, the landlady's room. Since Wang Haiming had probably come from the third sick hall, this meant that he had probably carried some information on the third sick hall on him. Chen Ge would not give up on that trail. After all, the third sick hall was the clue left behind by his parents. After the landlady knew of Chen Ge's intention, her reaction was surprisingly intense. She warned Chen Ge that if he did not get off her premises soon, she would call the cops. The steel door slammed in his face, and Chen Ge was feeling rather helpless, standing in the corridor. The landlady refused to cooperate no matter what Chen Ge said. "If I use my mallet to break down the lock of room 303, that landlady will probably call the police." Chen Ge returned to the third floor to discuss this with Dr. Gao, but he stopped when he reached the door. "Why is the person in room 302 still on the phone?" A young man's voice drifted out from behind the door, and the most repeated sentence was, "Are you trying to push me to my death?" "It has been more than half an hour since I left Men Nan's room, and the young man still hasn't finished his phone call." It was normal for a phone call to extend for longer periods of time, but it was weird for him to repeat the same few sentences with similar meanings again and again. Who is he arguing with? His voice is the only one I hear, and now that I listen closer, it doesn't sound like he's talking on the phone at all. Chen Ge leaned against the door to listen in. He was reminded of what the middle-aged man had said. When Wang Haiming acted up, he would argue with himself. This person is suspicious. He knocked on the door, and the sound of arguing stopped immediately. 10 seconds later, the door opened a sliver, and a young man's voice came out from behind the door. "How can I help you?" "Regarding this room 303 next to you?" "Don't know." Before Chen Ge finished, the door already closed. He had asked everyone he could, and Chen Ge was running out of options. He returned to room 304 and nodded at Dr. Gao before walking over to the door to lean against it. The mission venue given by the black phone is room 303. I'll need to enter it and check it out before midnight. Chen Ge rubbed his eyes before walking to the window and pushing it open. Room 304 and 303 were adjacent to each other, and their windows were about 1 meter apart. I should be able to get over it. Chen Ge pulled over a chair and placed it beside the window to give it a try. The window to room 303 was not locked, so he could pull it open from the outside. Getting over there is no problem. But what about the thing that might be waiting inside it? Climbing over the windows to get back might take too much time. Chen Ge lowered his head. The height of 3 floors was not quite short or tall. However, different from Ping An Apartments, the courtyard of Haiming Apartments was not a grass field, but hardened concrete.